With corn fertility, I'm a huge proponent of in-furrow starter fertilizers, quality in-furrow starter fertilizers. The reason for that is you get your 100% ortho products, and when the soil temperatures are cold, that product is still available to that plant. Then you see some of your 80% or your 60% ortho products. You have the poly and the ortho. The poly is not available to that plant until that soil temperature is probably sitting around, you talk to every different university, they're going to have a different saying, but usually about 65 degrees. Well, most of the soils in Nebraska don't get up to 65 degrees until Memorial Day weekend or after. And most of the corn in Nebraska is getting planted probably around the the middle of April. So there's a month and a half that corn seed is laying there growing. Once it germinates, it's growing without any nutrients. It's just pulling what it can from the soil. The reason the in-furrow products are so important is you're placing that either right under the seed, right on top of the seed, so the nutrients right there, or you're placing it 2x2 placement, so that when that radicle starts growing, it's going to hit that band of fertilizer right away. You want a good quality starter, because a bad quality starter, you're going to just pay a lot of money for heavy metals, and heavy metals the plant cannot uptake. One analogy I used to use years ago was the little plant is just like a little baby. You don't feed a human baby steak, you feed it baby food. A plant is the same way, for the simple fact that those little plants cannot digest that product coming in. They need a high ortho product to be able to digest that. They can digest the ortho right away. They cannot digest the poly, because the poly chain is really long and a young plant cannot digest that. So it takes a lot of time for that to break down in the soil. Now, that being said, I want to see farmers use fertility wisely to grow to enhance, if you will, their soil profile, because we're taking out extremely good yields, 250 to 300 bushel corn. Well, when you sit down and you go to the internet sometime and look at the charts of what a 250 bushel corn actually takes out of the soil, it takes a huge amount of phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, nitrogen, and all the micronutrients. So I want to make sure when they're pulling those yields out that they're replacing them the following year. If they're going to go corn the next year, make sure they're replacing them and make sure that they're adding a little bit more in there to build that soil profile. Because if your soil profile starts to go down like this because you keep taking too much out of the nutrients every year, your yield's going to end up following that. Nebraska, most of the farmers, not all of them, but most of the farmers are rotation. So they're going corn, soybeans. In eastern Nebraska, we don't do a lot of wheat. In western Nebraska, we have a lot of wheat. And right now with the soils up there, most people are building their soil profile. And also whether they're spoon feeding them. I'm a big proponent of spoon feeding. I like to see the starter fertilizer. I like to see another nitrogen source out there. I like to see a foliar feeding. Central Nebraska, we have the privilege of having a lot of center pivot irrigation. So you'll see a lot of nutrients go through the pivot. That's good. Places where they don't have the center pivot irrigation, where they just have gravity or no irrigation at all, they'll have to go out there and find a applicator or have their own applicator apply it. But I'm a big proponent of spoon feeding it. Corn, soybeans, wheat, milo. Spoon feeding, anytime you can spoon feed a plant, it's so much better, because as a human being, we can only drink so much water. If you gave me 5 gallons of water and that was my allotment for the week and told me to drink it in one day, I couldn't do it. The plant is the same way. When you're trying to force feed that plant all those nutrients at one time, the plant is unable to metabolize everything. So that's why I'm a very huge proponent of spoon feeding. The BP and furrow, from what I've seen, is you have your high quality starter fertilizer in there, your 318-18 in there. You have the microbials, the biologicals in there. You have the big sweetener in there. And when you put those three together, what I like about that is you're getting the jump start from the ortho starter. The microbes are helping that plant, because anytime you can create a zone around that seed and that seedling, you're creating a perfect zone, basically a little nursery, if you will, for that seedling. And then once that plant starts to germinate, it's going to hit the starter, it's going to hit the microbes, the benefit, and the sweetener. And that sweetener is just going to give that an extra boost. I correlate that to a sweetener to a sugar rush in me. I cannot eat a lot of sugar because the sugar, my body cannot metabolize sugar properly. I'll go on a sugar high, then all of a sudden, boom, I'm down there low. But with the big sweetener that's in the BP and furrow, that maintains a steady feeding of that plant. And so it doesn't give it a lot of sugar, it gives it enough to energize it. And whenever you have a plant that's energized, that plant is going to be healthier, it's going to grow faster, and it's going to be just kicking butt out there in the field. That's what really impresses me about the BP and furrow.